Have you ever read a book that just felt kind of spooky right from the start?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Ugh.
I know that feeling.
Well, we've been taking a deep dive into this book called Thornhill by Pam Smy,
Oh, very cool.
and it's definitely got that like a kind of creepy vibe going on.
Right.
What's really interesting about it is how it uses both words and these like super evocative illustrations to tell the story.
Uh-huh.
And the story is about these two girls, right, who are like separated by decades, but their lives are connected through this one specific old abandoned building.
That's cool. That's a connection.
Yeah, it's like really cool how the author kind of pulls that off.
Yeah.
So like the book has this dual narrative thing going on, right?
Okay.
Where the words are telling you all about Mary's like inner thoughts and feelings, and then the pictures are giving you these hints about what Ella's experiencing.
Well, I see.
So it's not just telling you a story, it's like you're really experiencing it and like piecing together these echoes of loneliness that these two girls feel.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so like you're trying to understand the pictures just as much as you're trying to understand what Mary is writing in her diary.
Gotcha.
So for this deep dive, we really wanted to like unravel these intertwined stories of Mary and Ella.
Okay, sounds good.
And we did a ton of research, to
Right,
try
okay.
and get to the heart of the themes that Pam Skimity is exploring.
Makes sense.
So we're looking at Mary in 1982. She's living at the Thornhill Institute for Children right when it's about to close down.
Hmm.
And then we jump forward to 2017 with Ella, and she's just moved in next door to the same building, but now it's totally deserted and kind of creepy.
Wow, so two girls, different times, same spooky setting.
Yeah.
That's got to be a recipe for something interesting, right?
It's so intriguing, right? Like you really want to know what happened.
For sure.
So one of the first things that really jumped out at us from the research was this like intense sense of isolation
Yeah, I bet.
that both of these girls experience in their own time periods.
Makes sense. I mean, if you think about it, being in an old abandoned building like that, it just has that kind of lonely, almost eerie feeling to it,
Exactly.
Like it's steeped in the memories of all the people who were there before, and now it's just empty.
It's almost like this like hidden connection between them, even though they're living in different times.
Oh, absolutely. Like
Yeah.
their loneliness is this thread that weaves their stories together across the years.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about this whole loneliness thing.
Yeah.
With Mary, back in 1982, she's an orphan, right?
Right.
And she's living in this institution, Thornhill, that's basically emptying out around her. All the other kids are leaving.
Oh, wow.
And our research describes her as being like super withdrawn.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't really connect with other people. She kind of keeps to herself.
Oh,
And people even thought she was a little strange.
that's rough.
So you can imagine she's living in this place that's supposed to be about community and taking care of these kids.
Right.
But she ends up feeling totally isolated.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, she's already lost her parents, and now the only home she's ever known is disappearing, too.
It's like she's experiencing this double whammy of abandonment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like losing your family and your sense of place all at once.
And then you've got Ella in 2017. She's the new kid in town. She just moved there, doesn't know anyone, no friends.
Right.
And on top of that, she's really struggling with the loss of her mom.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And to make things even tougher, her dad's away a lot for work.
Oh, man. So she's dealing with a lot of loss and change.
So she's pretty much alone a lot of the time.
Right.
And the thing is, when she looks out her bedroom window, like, what does she see? This massive looming shape of Thornhill Institute.
Oh, wow. So that building is like a constant reminder of her own isolation, almost like a symbol of it.
Exactly. And I think maybe subconsciously she senses that there's a whole history there. Like this building is full of secrets and stories and maybe even a chance for connection, which is what she's craving.
Right. And she's dealing with her own grief and feeling like an outsider, too. So in a way, maybe she sees something of herself in that old building.
So both of them, Mary and Ella, they're both dealing with this feeling of being utterly alone.
It's really powerful, isn't it?
It's like this unspoken dialogue between them across all those years, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a strong foundation for the mysteries that start to unfold.
Exactly.
So now that we've laid that groundwork, maybe we can shift gears a little and take a closer look at Mary's story in 1982.
Okay, so Mary's story is told through her diary entries, right?
Exactly. And those diary entries give us a really personal, unfiltered look into her life at Thornhill. Like we're right there with her in those final days.
Yeah, we really get to see her day-to-day experiences at the Institute.
Right.
But it's clear that she's dealing with a lot of hardship.
Yeah.
And a huge part of that is this bully.
Oh, no.
At first, Mary just refers to her as her in her diary. It's really chilling.
I bet, yeah. Why doesn't she use her name?
Well, the research suggests that Mary might be too afraid to even name her tormentor.
It's like the bully's presence is so big and scary that it's hard for Mary to even fully acknowledge it.
It's like this nameless, faceless threat that just hangs over everything.
That's so creepy.
Later on, we learn that the bully's name is Bella,
Okay.
and Bella is just plain awful to Mary.
Like, how so? What does she do?
Well, she constantly teases her, for one thing. She makes fun of her, picks on her.
Aw, it's always so hard when kids are cruel to each other like that.
Yeah, and not only that, but she destroys some of Mary's few belongings. Like, she just takes pleasure in ruining the things that are important to Mary.
It's so mean. And for a kid in Mary's position who doesn't have much to begin with, that must feel devastating. Like losing a part of herself.
I know, and it gets even worse.
Oh no, what else happens?
Bella actually locks Mary in a dark room.
That's seriously messed up.
Yeah, it's really disturbing. And you have to remember, Mary's already so isolated because Thornhill is closing down.
Right. There's no one to turn to for help. She's all alone.
Exactly. So she's completely vulnerable to Bella's cruelty. There's literally no escape from this constant torment.
Gosh, that's just heartbreaking. I can't even imagine what that must have felt like for her.
Our analysis of the diary entries really shows how trapped and alone Mary felt.
It's just awful to think about.
Ah.
So how does she cope with all this?
Well, despite all of this, Mary finds these little ways to deal with the situation.
Yeah,
It seems like she found some comfort in making paper dolls.
that's kind of sweet, actually. Like she's creating these little companions for herself in this lonely world.
It's like they give her a sense of control, you know?
Yeah, I can see that. Especially when everything else in her life feels so chaotic and out of her control.
Right. And then there's the secret garden.
Oh, a secret garden. That sounds peaceful.
Yeah, it's like this hidden place where she can go to get away from it all, to be alone, but in a good way.
Right, like a sanctuary where she can nurture something beautiful and find a moment of calm amidst all the turmoil.
And she spends a lot of time there tending to her garden.
So she's finding comfort in nature and in creating things with her hands. It's like she's seeking out those little sparks of beauty and peace wherever she can find them.
Absolutely. But as time goes on and more of the other kids leave Thornhill, her isolation gets even worse.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like she's losing the few friendly faces she had left.
Yeah, it's like she's being abandoned all over again.
And what about Bella? Is she still around?
Tragically, yes, Bella's still there. She's like this constant shadow over Mary's life.
I bet that just makes it feel even more hopeless for Mary, Like no matter what changes, the bullying never goes away.
Exactly. And this is where things take a really dark turn for Mary.
In what way?
Well, the diary entries from this period start to reveal a shift in her thinking.
What do you mean?
It's like all this mistreatment, the bullying, the loneliness, it starts to breed this really intense desire for revenge.
So she's starting to think about how to fight back.
Yeah, she wants to retaliate. It's like she feels so powerless that she's grasping at anything that might give her a sense of control back.
I can see how that would happen. I mean, if you're constantly being hurt and you feel like you have no other options, revenge might seem like the only way to make it stop.
It raises some really tough questions about the impact of trauma and what happens when someone is pushed to their breaking point.
Absolutely. Now, let's fast forward to Ella's story in 2017.
All right. So Ella's experience is pretty unique because her whole story is told through black and white illustrations. There are no words from her perspective.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's got to be a unique challenge for the illustrator to convey a whole story without any words.
It's like we're seeing the world through her eyes, but we have to kind of interpret what she's thinking and feeling based on those images.
I bet those illustrations are super detailed and evocative then, to make up for the lack of dialogue.
They are. It's really amazing. So in the beginning, we see Ella's curiosity being piqued by this abandoned Thornhill Institute, right?
Okay, so she's drawn to this mysterious building. What is it about it that grabs her attention?
I think in part it's because she's craving connection. Remember, she's new in town, she doesn't have any friends, and she's grieving the loss of her mom.
Right, so she's feeling really alone.
Exactly. And then at one point, she thinks she sees a girl inside the institute.
Oh, wow. So there's this glimmer of hope for connection, even if it's in this abandoned place.
And that really fuels her actions. She becomes determined to find out more about this other girl and about Thornhill itself.
So she starts exploring the building.
Yeah, she actually ventures inside. And remember, the building is totally deserted. It's been abandoned for years.
I bet that's a little creepy. It's probably full of shadows and dust and who knows what else.
Exactly. And as she's exploring, she stumbles upon these tangible remnants of the past.
Ooh, like what?
Well, one of the most significant discoveries is Mary's diary.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
So now Ella has access to Mary's thoughts and feelings from all those years ago.
And it's through reading Mary's diary that Ella starts to realize that the girl she thought she saw might not be another kid.
What do you mean?
Well, she starts to think that maybe it was a ghost.
Oh, that sends chills down my spine.
Yeah. It definitely adds this whole other layer of mystery and intrigue to the story.
So is Ella scared off by this realization?
Not at all. If anything, it makes her even more fascinated by Mary's story.
I guess it's like a puzzle she has to solve now. She's got to figure out what happened to Mary all those years ago.
Right. And for Ella, this investigation becomes a way for her to connect with the past and maybe even find some peace or solace in her own lonely present.
That makes sense. I mean, we often look to the past to understand ourselves and our place in the world, right?
Definitely. Now, I want to talk about how Pam Smy structured the book.
Okay, what's special about the way she put it all together?
Well, remember, we've got Mary's story in the past, told through her diary, and Ella's story in the present, told through those illustrations.
Right. And those two stories are happening at the same time, in a way.
Exactly. The book alternates back and forth between them.
I see. So as a reader, you're constantly jumping between these two different perspectives, these two different ways of experiencing the story.
Right. And the way Smy does it, it creates this really fascinating rhythm. It's like you're getting pieces of a puzzle and you have to put them together yourself.
It's got to keep you on the edge of your seat trying to figure out what happened at Thornhill.
It's so suspenseful. It's like every time you switch back and forth between Mary's words and Ella's pictures, you gain a little more insight into the mystery.
I love books that make you work for it like that.
Yeah.
It's so much more rewarding when you feel like you've actively participated in uncovering the story.
Exactly. It makes it stick with you longer. Now, our research highlighted some key themes that run through Thornhill.
Okay, let's talk about those. What are some of the big ideas that Smy is exploring?
Well, loneliness is definitely a central theme, as we talked about before.
Right, that sense of isolation that connects Mary and Ella across time.
But then there's also this really poignant theme of friendship.
Interesting. How does that play out?
Well, Mary clearly longs for friendship. She wants to connect with someone. But tragically, she experiences betrayal instead.
Oh, that's so sad. Especially since she's already dealing with so much.
Yeah. And then you have Ella, who's also seeking connection, first with that mysterious girl she thinks she sees, and then through her growing fascination with Mary's story.
It's like they're both searching for that one person who understands them, who sees them for who they are.
Absolutely. Now, we can't talk about the themes in Thornhill without talking about bullying.
Right. That's a major element of Mary's experience, as we discussed.
And it's not just a plot device, it's a really powerful exploration of the devastating impact of bullying.
Absolutely. Smy doesn't shy away from showing how cruel kids can be to each other and how much damage that can do.
And then, as a direct result of that bullying, we see the theme of revenge emerging in Mary's story.
Right. Like we talked about before, she's starting to think about how to strike back at Bella.
And it's really thought-provoking because it makes you consider the long-term consequences of pain and suffering. What happens when someone is pushed too far?
It makes you wonder if revenge ever really brings the satisfaction people hope for, or if it just creates more pain and suffering in the end.
Definitely something to think about. Now, one of the most powerful and overarching themes, in my opinion, is the power of the past.
Yeah, that's something that really resonated with me too. Thornhill isn't just an empty building. It's like a container for all those memories and emotions that happened within its walls.
Right. It's like the building itself is haunted by the past. And Ella's connection to Mary's story shows us that those past events can really ripple through time and affect the present.
It's a reminder that history isn't just something that happened a long time ago. It shapes who we are, how we see the world, and the choices we make.
And it's really beautiful to see how Ella's journey helps her connect with another human being, even though they lived in different times and never actually met. It's like they're united by their shared experience of loneliness and their longing for friendship.
And by uncovering Mary's story, Ella gains a deeper understanding not only of the past, but also of herself and the world around her. It's like she's finding pieces of herself in the echoes of Mary's life.
So let's shift gears a little and talk about the author, Pam Smy. Our research told us she has a background in illustration, and she actually teaches at the Cambridge School of Art.
That makes total sense. I mean, the way she combines words and pictures in Thornhill is so masterful. It's clearly the work of someone who understands both art forms deeply.
Right, and what I found really interesting was how she came up with the idea for the book.
Yeah, where'd the inspiration come from?
Well, she was playing around with this concept of placing a child in an old, isolated house instead of a more traditional setting. She wanted to see what would happen.
I see. So the setting itself becomes a character in the story.
Exactly. And the character of Mary, believe it or not, was actually inspired by a character from The Secret Garden.
Oh, wow. I love that book. It also has this really strong sense of place and the power of nature to heal.
And here's a fun fact. The setting for Ella's story was actually inspired by the view from Smy's own bathroom window.
That's so cool. It's amazing how inspiration can come from the most unexpected places.
I know, right? And we can't forget to mention the crucial role that those black and white illustrations play in telling Ella's story.
Right, they're not just illustrations. They're a whole other language that Smythe is using to communicate with the reader.
They really draw you into Ella's world and make you feel like you're right there with her, experiencing everything she's seeing and feeling.
They make the book so much more immersive and evocative. And did you know that Thornhill was Smythe's first novel?
No way, really? I had no idea.
Yeah. And it actually received several award nominations, which is pretty impressive for a debut. It really shows how unique and impactful the book is.
Absolutely. So to sum it all up, Thornhill is this totally captivating book with a really unique dual narrative structure. It explores these profound themes of loneliness, friendship, bullying, and revenge.
And it does it all through this incredible blend of text and illustrations. Like, it's a feast for your imagination.
It really is. And it's just so engaging, you know? You've got the
Yeah.
spooky atmosphere that draws you in, the mystery that keeps you guessing, and then these characters who are so real and relatable in their struggles, you just can't help but get invested in their stories.
Absolutely. It's a book that stays with you long after you've finished reading it.
And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is that places can hold on to these echoes of past emotions and experiences. Like Thornhill is a physical embodiment of that idea.
Yeah. It makes you wonder what secrets are hidden in the places we walk by every day, you know? What stories are those walls holding on to?
Totally. And by understanding those hidden stories, maybe we can gain a deeper understanding of our own present and how we got here. It's like history is always whispering to us if we just know how to listen.
And sometimes it takes a book like Thornhill to open our ears and our hearts to those whispers.
What do you think about that? What other books or stories, real or imagined, come to mind when you think about the intertwining of past and present?